So, if you're wondering what that video was in front of my in front of this part, that video I made a year ago on my main channel, Edwin the Jesus, and it was my little summary of the Council of Nicaea, the first of the ecumenical councils, and again, like the most, I think, prevalent issue definitely was Arianism and kind of discussing that. But there were many other things that I didn't fully go in depth. It was meant to be more of a summary, but of Constantine and the council itself. But there was discussions about like the liturgy, church organization, and kind of the conduct of priesthood and other things. There was many things discussed, though I think the main focus definitely was on Arianism. And yeah, if you want to see more videos like that, feel free to follow my main channel, Edwin the Jesus, instead of here at EDJ Reacts. So dang, I wanted to sneeze there, but I couldn't. I hate that feeling. But yeah, let's get to the video. Part the rest.
Last we left off, Constantine had just called together a council of Christian bishops from around the known world. They were to resolve all the challenges of the church so that he, Constantine, could get back to uniting the empire under Christianity. The council was set to tackle issues ranging from what day to celebrate Easter to how to heal the Meletian Schism, a sect like the Donatists who were concerned with the readmittance of lapsed priests into the church. This council was also going to formalize how the liturgy was given, provide rules for the structure of the church, and set down some guidelines for being a priest. No living in the houses of young women, no self-castration, no engaging in usury, that sort of thing. But above all, they were there to deal with one thing: the Arian heresy. This was the main topic, the front and center issue that everybody had come to discuss. It was tearing apart the Christian world, and it was time it came to an end. So 318 bishops assembled in one late spring, 325 CE, in the coastal Anatolian town of Nicaea to settle this once and for all. The conference center was arrayed in splendor by the emperor. The bishops and all their aides and advisors were guests of the empire, housed, fed, and cared for at imperial expense. But more than that, the emperor himself would be in attendance. That's just how important this was to Constantine. Constantine set the tone for the meeting, walking in not surrounded by guards, as was the norm for the person of the emperor, but rather entering surrounded only by a few friends. This wasn't a battle, it was a time to come together.
Yeah, I think there's always unanimous praise for Constantine's conduct. I keep calling him like the moderator of the entire thing, kind of the peacekeeper. He's the middleman of this situation where this divide can meet under him, under the pretext of why can't we all, just be bros? We're all Christian here, we can all get along. And again, his conduct is always praised, and it is worthy to be, highlighted, because again, he's, as we all know, matters of theology are heated, and so are disagreements. And again, this guy had to essentially be in the middle of that and try to get everyone on board. And, yeah, overall, just Constantine deserves to be praised because, man, did he put up with a lot in this situation, And again, probably the best moderator we could have ever asked for in a situation like this,
And so it began. The debate was vigorous, using all the rhetorical art the Roman world was famous for. Laity and clerics both engaged in arguing the merits of each side, while the emperor sat there, gently reminding everyone that they were all Christians here, and that they needn't treat each other like enemies of the faith. And for weeks the discussions went on, contentious, impassioned, on at least one occasion breaking out into a brawl. But for all this, the truth was that most of the bishops were relatively moderate, looking to come to the correct answer, but believing that an answer could be found that both sides could agree to. and the emperor himself was happy to embrace anything that would just get all these guys to agree. So the discussions really resolved down to the points of view of two men. Arius, the namesake of Arianism, whose unbending views had caused the council to be summoned in the first place, and a man named Athanasius. Athanasius was a deacon of Alexandria, where the whole Arian schism began. He was an ardent anti-Arian, and he intended to do everything in his power to make sure that no compromise with the Arians was
And that he
reached.
did.
And so time rolled forward with the council split, no overwhelming majority willing to come down on either side. Debate continued on how to achieve a compromise position, but the discussion wound in circles as these two men, Athanasius and Arius, dominated the discussion and kept any chance of truly finding a middle ground at bay. Still, time and again, the emperor reminded them all that they were here to heal the church, that as Romans and as Christians, they were more alike than different, and that they should be able to find a way to work such esoteric theological differences out. But Constantine, powerful, intelligent, and adroit as he was not the type of subtle theologian that Athanasius turned out to be. Because as the debate moved on, Athanasius began to introduce the term homoousian.
Yes, okay. So, homoousian basically means same substance, and it was meant to kind of like, at least in this context, used to straight up go against Arian, because Arian was staunchly against the saying and the same substance, obviously, as we know about the idea of Arianism. So him using this word in particular essentially kind of confirms that it's kind of like he puts Arian in a position he could never say a yes to because of this word, same substance, between God the Father and, God the Son, Jesus. And, yeah, again, like, Athanasius, very cunning man, and obviously him and Arian are probably the two big figures when talking about this first council, as even he mentioned, as prominent as they were in discussion, To
the discussion. And this was a throw of the dice, because homoousian means of the same substance, which made many of the bishops a little uneasy, as it had been used in other heretical contexts before to claim that there was no difference between God the Son and God the Father. But Athanasius knew that this was a term that Arius had objected to in the past, and that he would never agree to any compromise that involved using the term homoousian.
Big brain.
So Athanasius started to appear to be the reasonable one. He could look as if he were slightly willing to bend, knowing that no compromise he ever offered would be accepted so long as it could be worded talking about Christ as homoousian. And here's where the debate really began to get rowdy, because now people had to polarize. You had to agree with this term or not, as no one was going to compromise around it. There was one last attempt at bringing everyone together, though, trying to get people to meet in the middle and say that Christ was homoiousian, or of similar nature to God. But by now, this was thoroughly rejected by all those who had declared themselves firmly on one side or another. And even as this compromise was being discussed, Athanasius was secretly pulling people over to his side. While the great debate was happening in public, the anti-Arian faction was making deals and persuading people in private. Slowly, bishop by bishop, they assembled a majority coalition.
We've seen a lot of struggles in this channel with politics, court intrigue. This is the first time we're seeing it on this channel's history through the Christian perspective. This is Christian Game of Thrones right here, guys. That's kind of what I call it with some of this maneuvering. This is Christian Game of Thrones. And again, even religion, which, I'd say religion, even more than politics or any other force, is something people are going to fight tooth and nail over. Whether it be disputes in theology and doctrine. When people argue about this, it gets heated, and very rarely do I see people ever fully bend or be, and that's just the thing. I think it can even be more like frightening and heated than politics or anything else, or religion and religious debates. When this video comes out, we'll see in the comments, but how this turns all out, maybe, but yeah, overall, like, it really is. And it's funny with, that a religion, what Jesus preached could, like, obviously what people took from the words of Christ and with the church, and you see all this splintering over disagreements from the very beginning of, should we let non-Jews be involved, to all of this escalating, just like, it's kind of amazing and almost kind of also sad, just, how something like this can just keep going and be a cause of great disunity, in a sense, obviously, even to this day, like, but that's just, us humans taking something and obviously morphing it and changing it so much and splintering it so much, as we see with many church schisms and even with all the, denominations. There's just so much, and yeah, there's a lot to this, man. Like, when you really think about it, there is so much to this that's insane,
And soon, that majority was threatening damnation and excommunication for anybody who followed the heretical Arian formulation. And so, those less firm in their Arian beliefs began to switch sides as well. Not wanting to risk their immortal souls, or perhaps their positions in the church, almost every delegate signed on to the Homoousian idea of Christ. Only Arius himself, one deacon, and 2 other bishops refused to sign what would become known as the Nicene Creed, cementing the Trinitarian view of Christ. And thus, Arianism was declared heresy, its teachings anathema, and its preaching an exilable offense.
You know what's funny? Arian actually comes back. I believe he was exiled, yes, but I do believe he comes back, because Arianism eventually gets more tolerated by Constantine, by his, I believe relative, or at least a part of a relative or distant person of the royal family, which is, Esubia? Wait. I need to learn how to pronounce this. Yeah, so it was Eusebius. Eusebius of... Who was it? Nicomedia? Yes. Sorry, I'm looking at my notes as well. I actually pulled out my, Christian Bible college notes for this. It's actually one of my favorite things we learned, in Bible college about this. So yeah, essentially, Eusebius of Nicomedia is actually responsible for baptizing, Constantine the Great, and I believe kind of helping, die down the negativity towards Arianism. Even Constantine was way more welcoming it of when he was in his deathbed. And yeah, Eusebius of Nicomedia is the one who, baptized Constantine, and he was pretty like, yeah, Arianism. So yeah, and I believe his Athanasius is the one who gets exiled later. So it's kind of a weird role reversal between the two.
The emperor got up, dusted off his chlamys, and thought to himself, job well done. I mean, after all, he had brought all the priests together, they had basically all agreed on something, and he could now exile those few who had disagreed, unity would be restored, and he could get back to ruling the empire.
Yeah, it's never that easy with religion, unfortunately, Constantine. Job ain't well done.
But it's not quite that simple, because a few months later, Constantine found he also had to exile a man named Eusebius, a prelate who had signed the creed but who continued to refuse to condemn Arius. This may seem like a small thing,
Yeah, there's also another Eusebius named Eusebius of Caesarea, I think, and he's the writer of the ecclesiastical history and the Chronicon, and is famed as an early, probably, the, early church, scholar, and, historical recounter. I'm not sure if that's the word, but essentially, detailing and documenting a lot of the early church history. So there are 2 Eusebiuses, one who, I think this is the one, yeah, of Nicomedia, who convinces Constantine that Arianism ain't the worst thing ever. And there's the other Eusebius of Caesarea, who wrote the ecclesiastical history. So, yeah, just so we're clear.
Man being exiled over taking a half-hearted stand not condemning his friend, but Eusebius was actually a distant relative of Constantine's, and unlike Arius, who was principally known in Egypt and the ecclesiastical circles of the East, Eusebius was a member of Constantine's court. In fact, that's why he had to exile him, because he kept pushing for Arius in Constantine's inner circle long after Constantine was good and done with this whole heresy thing. But Constantine's sister liked Eusebius, and soon he was recalled from exile. But if there was any doubt which side Eusebius was on, his exile cemented him as a firm Arian. And so he worked at court day by day to soften the emperor's views on Arianism. And, as even exiling its principal supporters and declaring the belief heretical hadn't actually stamped out the Arian beliefs, Constantine began to be receptive to the idea of a softer rapprochement than he had previously been, a kind of coexistence. After all, he wanted harmony in his empire. But harmony was not on Eusebius's mind. He schemed against Athanasius, never publicly putting himself in opposition to him, but getting other groups to accuse Athanasius of a myriad of crimes. At last, through a rigged trial, he was able to get Athanasius convicted, and he convinced the emperor that it was actually Athanasius who was now preventing the rift in the Christian church to heal, with his die-hard refusal to readmit schismatics into the church, and that he should be exiled. Meanwhile, Eusebius had also...
I'm telling you, Christian Game of Thrones, guys. Oh, man.
Succeeded in getting Arius recalled. So with Athanasius exiled and Arius recalled, the Arian doctrine began to gain strength in the empire again. Constantine himself would, at the very end of his life, be baptized by Eusebius. And his son? His son would be a die-hard Arian throughout his rule. And though after hundreds of years the Nicene Creed would eventually win out, this reprieve for Arianism allowed it to spread and slip out of the empire. For Eusebius ordained a Goth named Ulphilas to go on a mission to the Gothic tribes, and he was successful, converting many and cementing Arian Christianity as the Christianity of the northern tribes. And this is one of the reasons that the Gothic tribes never really integrated into the Roman Empire. It's one of the reasons that rather than become assimilated like so many other groups, they remained separate, integral to the empire but never really being part of it. And in the end, it's part of why they tore the empire apart. Join us next time as we
So, I'm gonna move on to the next part and finish this video.